Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by podcast host and former healthcare leader, Richard Kraft. Richard got laid off just before the pandemic, and it really depressed him because he was attaching his self-worth to a role. But we're going to be talking to him about how he got out of that and now how he's helping others show their real self-worth where it's not attached to a role or anything like that. So, Richard, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Richard Kraft. Before becoming a podcast host, I've held a number of jobs, but prior to being laid off during the pandemic, I was in healthcare for 12 years, and some of that was in a level one trauma center, working nights. And then some of that was as a leader, managing ambulatory clinics with multiple service lines. And so, yeah, I got laid off and kind of dealt with it poorly. And once I got a grip on things and, I decided, hey, maybe I'll, with a recommendation from my daughter and my father, I started a podcast and that gave me some kind of direction. And, so I think it gave me something to do, focus on, somewhere to put my attention. And since then, kind of one of those things is, the purpose of the podcast is let other people know, hey, you're not alone. You're not crazy. These things kind of happen, and sometimes you just got to go for it and do your own thing. And yeah, sometimes the things you think are important are not really as important as you thought.
So when you were working in a level one trauma center, were you like a nurse or?
No, I was actually one of the only non-clinical people amongst all the clinical people, and I was a senior clerk. And I think the easiest way to describe it is a lot of people would say that I'm pretty much like radar on MASH. I'm just the guy who knows a little bit about everything and kind of gets things done and make sure I take care of the people, the doctors and the nurses so they can take care of the patients. So I'm kind of like the little go-to guy of really anything. Something's broke, you need something fixed, you need to know when something's going to be fixed. Um, yeah, I'm the guy.
So talk about your definition, since you went through all this, define your definition of self-acceptance.
Oof. Kind of. I want to say probably, you know, looking at the good, the bad, the ugly. But I think a lot of it is, I think as caregivers, as people who work in healthcare or professions like that, I would say teachers, some service, military, when these people retire or get injured on the job and they have to leave, oftentimes they have hard times transitioning because your identity is tied up in what you do. Because I think when you're of service a lot, I don't think it's necessarily what you do. I think it's who you are. And I think kind of, if you serve as a leader, you serve your country, you probably serve in many areas of life. You're just a natural giver. And when, that kind of stuff happens and that's kind of tied to you, it feels like something's very personal, even though it could be a business decision, like during COVID. And so, kind of understanding that um, my worth, my value wasn't tied to that, and that, I'm still the same person. I still have kind of the same mission in mind in helping others and serving, helping others get where they want to get. But I think I'm just doing it in a different way. And, being a podcast host, as a way to tell other stories, give those lessons to those who need to hear them. Um, and hopefully they help somebody, but through podcasting, I can reach a lot more people than, the two ambulatory clinics I used to manage and the people I came in contact with daily. So I kind of had to rearrange my perspective on how I looked at things and also accept that, there was a lot of good that came out of that job and some of the skills it gave me, such as interviewing people for roles, were very useful. And so once I kind of forgave that and had a little self-acceptance of myself and knew I was the same person, I just kind of needed somewhere to point that attention and that same caring spirit. And the podcast was it.
Well, now that you've went through all that you went through and you got a different perspective on life, what is your definition now of success?
Well, I think so. In this process, probably one of the most fulfilling things that um, has happened as a result of this is I've really been able to be spend more time with my daughter as she's growing up. And, anyone who's listened to my episodes know that, at one time I had this um, idea that maybe I would work my way through the ranks of healthcare. And when my daughter was 18 and was going to go to college or something, I'd be able to be wherever she needed me to be and spend time with her. And I would have that flexibility then. And when I got laid off and everything happened, um, it was just more kind of a, hey, nobody says you're going to make it till she's 18. So, the time is now. You're having the opportunity to be the father you want now. And so, like that freedom of when she's sick, I can go pick her up. I can take her to the doctor. I can wait on her hand and foot. I spent the day taking her and her friend to meet some of her friends and just hang out and stuff and do play dates. And so, having that freedom, being okay. Do I make the money I once did? Absolutely not. But is my quality of life way better? Absolutely. And to me, that's kind of the success, having that freedom. The fact that I'm not really answering to anyone other than my wife, maybe at times, but outside of that, I don't have to be anywhere at any certain time unless it's an obligation that I have to my daughter, my wife, my father, or somebody that I've chose to invest my time in and give my time to. And so to me, being able to do that, that's success. Having my life designed around that kind of principle and um, the fact that I get to give my time to the most important people in my life versus giving my time to maybe some corporation that would probably, replace me before my obituary dropped. So, yeah.
Well, going through everything that you went through, did you ever have any issues with sobriety or what are your thoughts on sobriety?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. I drank and dealt with things poorly. And, oh man, made horrible times, wasn't getting along with my wife because there was this pressing issue of, you need to go back to work. And, I just kind of didn't have any direction. And that certainly didn't help. And it didn't help with being angry or anything. And so, um, yeah, it took me a little bit and I stumbled a few times, but finally got a hold of it and I've got over a year of not drinking alcohol and um and it depends on what your vice is, it doesn't necessarily have to be alcohol, but that was what was bad for me and um I got a grip on that and kind of started exercising, getting some natural dopamine and things turned around because there's really just no way other than sitting through the discomfort. Um, you know, it's still going to be there when the alcohol wears off, and the sooner you face it, the sooner you can get pointed in the right direction. And um, there's some people like my wife, she can have a drink or two and she just falls asleep. If it's not your thing, then hey, I'm not talking to you, but if you got a problem with it. And if you do, then I would just say the sooner you can get a handle on it, the better off you'll be. You know, kind of think about the future and is it going to lead to being the best version of you? So I don't know how too many daily drinkers that live out the best versions of themselves that don't end poorly. So a little food for thought.
Well, tell us about your podcast. Tell us, what listeners can expect when they listen to it and where we can hear it.
Yeah, so it's pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, um, and it is just about fatherhood, mental health, navigating the chaos of everyday life. There's some solo episodes, and you can hear kind of my journey of where I started as I just maybe was a little over a month sober at that time. You can hear the struggles, some of the real talk that I go through of struggling with myself, whether or not I want to continue to podcast. And then I started having some guests, and um, that was kind of a whole shift in the podcast. And, then through joining Podmatch and getting kind of a plethora of guests and some guest spots, it's just kind of, become the thing. I enjoy it so much. But yeah, my podcast is about kind of putting the stories out there, telling other stories, recounting, recording history a little bit. We're fortunate enough to live in a time that, you know, I've seen pictures of my great grandparents, but I've never heard their voices. Now we have this kind of medium that things can be saved for generations to come. People can know exactly what we were going through, exactly what was going on in the world, exactly what we were thinking, our views, what concerned us, what we were happy about. And so part of it's that. So yeah, it kind of encompasses many things, but in general, we're all much more similar and alike than we are different, yet we fight over differences. And I think we'd just be better off coming together over commonality, and we can make the world a little bit better that way. Learning from one another and just being nice to one another and kind of approaching each other with curiosity and listening to other stories and their culture, their upbringing, what's different, why they believe something's different, as opposed to always just, seeming like we have to fight to the death over what's different.
What tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of?
Yeah, so um, kind of I'm just going to continue pushing out interviews with valuable content that I think is valuable to the listeners, and that kind of covers what's important to me. Like I said, recording some history, some giving some lessons out there, um, kind of hearing other people's struggles and how they overcome them, and giving you that opportunity to take that leap. And something that's kind of helped me with whether it's sobriety and whatnot, is um, things like consistency and accountability. So I'm in the process of standing up a private accountability group that's by email invite only, and you'll be able to reach out to me through the link tree. But yeah, so that's kind of something I want to help others with, is a private accountability and just helping other people, improve their lives and stay accountable to themselves and whatever it is they're trying to move forward with. I didn't really have a lot. I did it for a living, so you know, but I'm also part of a podcast connection network, and that's my accountability system. But I did it for a living in healthcare, holding others accountable, helping them with their goals that kind of factor into their annual reviews and whatnot. So, you know, it's kind of my contribution of and wanting to help others. Some people do life coaching, and I'm going to do accountability. So that's probably the biggest thing I've got on the horizon. And that's kind of got to go with the podcast. And um, perhaps I want to write a book. It's kind of been on the back burner for a while, and I think I needed a few more pieces of the story. And I think kind of the layoff and getting myself to here, a little over a year of podcasting and sobriety and, standing up the accountability group, I think that's kind of the beginning of the end of the story. So that's also something I'd like to start on. But yeah, a few things in the work there. I feel like I got the podcasting piece down a little bit, like on schedule with consistency and posting and how I like my system to flow. So now it's time for kind of a little phase 2 and phase 3 of the business plan of an entrepreneurial kind of journey and spirit.
Well, so everybody can keep up with everything that you're up to, throw out your contact info.
Yeah, so you can find me if you know how to do the link tree. It's a link tree / Richard P. Craft, or you can reach me at rpaul. Let me hold on. Let me see. rpaul.craft@gmail.com. Had to think about that for a minute. Yeah, but that's also in the link tree. And of course, if you find me anywhere on Buzzsprouts, Apple, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I'm on all of them. Find me anywhere in there, there'll be a link tree and you'll pop up and you'll be able to contact me directly, or, you can reach out to me through DMs or however you'd like. I check them. I don't have a social media team or anything like that yet. So yeah, it'll be me.
We'll close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Yeah, I got a couple. So, a couple of things I've written down lately is, you know, doing the right thing never goes out of style. So focus on doing the right thing when in doubt. And you know what it is. And I always kind of just say, go out and be the person you want to meet. That's how the world gets better. I mean, be the person you want to meet. If you want to be a butthole and you want to meet more buttholes, then good luck. Go for it. But, it's kind of like the golden rule. Just if you're cool and you approach other people and you're cool, then you have a conversation and just be cool with each other. And, slowly, perhaps the world will get better.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember that. Be who you want to be. Also, remember to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Jump on your favorite podcast app, leave us a review, follow us. If you have any guest or suggestion topics, Curtis Jackson 1978 at att.net is the place to send them. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Richard, thank you for all you do, and thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.